Thank you, Chairman Olmsted and committee members. First and foremost, I would like to thank you for your time, your efforts in not only this whole Finance and Appropriations Committee, but also for the work that you do. I've been here since 9 o'clock, and I know to you this is an everyday, and I can totally appreciate the challenges that you go through, and I got to witness some of that. I am Wade Lucas. I'm the superintendent of the Olentangy Local Schools, which is just about 20 miles north of here. So I had one of the shortest drives. And I am going to somewhat stray from my script. You do have my testimony in front of you, and I do want to first and foremost respect your time. So therefore, I want to hit the highlights. As I mentioned, I serve as the superintendent of Olentangy Schools, the fastest growing school district in the state of Ohio for the past 10 years. At one time, we had one building as long ago as 1990, educating roughly 1,400 kids. Today, we have 3 high schools, 5 middle schools, 15 elementary schools, and 17,500 students. So when we talk about explosive growth, we very much are there. We also serve, as you may recall and probably know, as the poster child of the original budget. When Governor Casey came out, we had the largest increase of any school district percentage-wise in the state of Ohio. Changes have taken place, and we have taken on a new poster child theme, and we share that with Columbus Public. We are now second in regard to the amount of money that has been taken away. In fact, if you combine the amount on the table to lose with Columbus Public, it amounts to about $32 million. I just want to give you a little bit about our school district because we are very unique and we are an outlier. And when individuals look at us and say, why, I just want to go through a few things. Growth and change have become constants in our school district, and unfortunately so is our level of state funding. The last time we received a substantial increase in state funding was 2005. Since that time, 2005, we've grown 8,000 students and constructed 11 buildings, all on the shoulders and at the feet of the local property owner, because we've been on the state guarantee all those years. For 1 decade, we've been on the state guarantee. We've received approximately $7 million per year from the state of a now $160 million budget. In that time, we have grown 8,000 students, and as I mentioned, built 11 buildings. So we're currently, facility-wise, have bonds on the table for approximately $300 million. And as you also know, we continue to operate with what our local property owner will pass. Olentangy residents have gone above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to supporting our educational program. Along with approving several tax issues for their local schools, they are also paying the same income tax rate as every other Ohioan. According to fiscal year 11 data, the average Ohio school district receives about 75% of what its residents pay in income taxes. Olentangy receives just 5% of what our residents pay in income taxes. That means our residents' income tax dollars are going to fund other school districts, even though the money is desperately needed at home to cover our enrollment growth, which is exactly the reason we continuously have to go back to our local property owners. When the governor's funding formula was first released, a few people told me Olentangy's proposed increase stuck out like a sore thumb. Here's a figure that I think stands out to me, $363. That's the amount of money Olentangy receives from the state for each one of our students, $363. Now, we do not spend money in a crazy fashion. We have one of the lowest expenditure per pupil in Central Ohio. It's right around $9,400 per pupil. Of that $9,400, we get $363 from the state. State average is $3,200, or 9 times that amount. And had the governor's proposal become a reality, Olentangy would receive about $1,100 per student, which is still drastically less than the state average. Olentangy is not done growing. Enrollment projections indicate we will continue to experience significant growth in another decade, probably topping out somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 23,000 students. If things stay as they are, our local property owners will fund those new students. I also might add that growth of 8,000, the average size school district in the state of Ohio is 2,800 students. We have grown 3 school districts, average size school districts, since 2005. We respectfully request that you consider funding enrollment growth in this budget and potentially address what I would call the 6%ers, the cap, the districts that are proposed to have caps on any amount that they may grow, with any additional state surplus dollars that could come through. Providing state funding, additional state funding, won't undo the extra burden our taxpayers have faced in the past, but it will help ease the burden of that growth in the years to come. Thank you so much for your time, and I would be willing to entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Could you ask for some clarification before we go to other questions? I got confused in your references to reductions in funding. We had some maps that were looking at the funding projected for next year compared to this year.
Right.
And it appeared there were no districts getting less funds. So could you explain what you meant by
Yes.
the reduction and then when you combine it with Columbus City? Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to address that. I was referencing the original budget that came out in the simulated numbers, where Olentangy was projected to get an additional $14 million above what we had received over the past 10 years. So therefore, now the new simulations say that we're supposed to get approximately $500,000 per year instead of $14 million.
So the difference would be one projection of an increase to another projection?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Superintendent. A couple questions I just want to get clear in my mind. When you're talking about explosive growth and you have future growth, 2 questions I have. One, what is the current build out of your community? How much residential still left to be built? How much is commercial that still remains to be built in your community is the first question.
About 50% of our district has been developed. So depending on how the other 50% of our school district is developed, whether it's commercial or whether it's residential, will determine how many additional students we get. Those trends, by the way, of topping out at approximately 22,000 comes from about 20 years of enrollment projection trends based on live births and also any development that's already on the books for starting housing developments in the district. So it's roughly 50% of the district.
Okay. Follow-up, Chairman? And you indicated you have currently approximately 17,500 students in a flow, a pipeline flow. I hate to use it like that, but all from K to 12. Can you give me an idea of every year? Because what I'm concerned with, you have 23 buildings, and I have no idea how much it costs to maintain that. That if you have everybody uploaded in 10th, 11th, 12th, when the majority of them, you only have 1,500 students in the other grades, you're going to have all these buildings that you're going to maintain or have to close up. So I try to get an idea of where you are in the spectrum.
Excellent question. I think that's something that we deal with on a daily basis. We have approximately 1,000 graduates out of the 3 high schools. We have approximately 1,450 first graders. So we do know this. We do know that our enrollment has somewhat flattened out in the elementaries from what it's been in the past. So we do follow the bubble that's going through our school district. Right now it's at the middle school and high school level, because the challenge that we have is exactly what you talked about. We don't want to get 10, 15 years down the road and have buildings that are lower than capacity. So therefore, our dilemma, and we've talked about it for the past 3 years, how do we continue to grow at this moment and stop building. And that's where we are. We're projecting that we're going to continue to grow, but the plan right now is to not build any additional high schools or middle schools, probably reconfigure, restructure, and also look at outside alternatives, which we continue to work on so that we can ease that bubble through the system. And eventually we will get to zero growth. I will not see that day, but eventually we will get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lucas, can you talk to us a little bit about what you think a funding formula for the state of Ohio should look like in terms of, should we be funding students? Should we be funding buildings? What do we fund?
I think it's a great question, and thank you for asking that. That's the challenge. Again, I sat here and listened this morning. You have tremendous challenges on your plate. We are not against dollars following students. I want to make that clear. We're not against dollars following students. We do believe that you have to, as representatives, have to come to a specific amount. Whether that's 5,000, whether that's 5,700, whether that's 6,200, I don't know the answer to that. I have opinions on that, but I don't know specific research-backed questions. So therefore, we would be in favor of dollars following students. We would be in favor of minimum amount of dollars, whether you put I know we put the cap on one end, maybe we say on the other end, 1,000, whatever that number might be. So as far as really looking at a funding formula that I can suggest to you, I do not have one today. Because if I did, I would be a hero in a lot of different states. But I do know that what we're getting right now is not following students, because we're getting approximately $7 million, or to put it another way, $363 per. And when a student does leave our school district, 5,700 follows. So that has to include some local share that goes with that 363 to make up that 5,700.
That's one way of describing it. Another way would be that, some of the other smaller amount from the state also goes with that student till you get up to that amount.
That's correct.
Of state aid. Thank you. I need to ask a question. Are you done, Representative? Okay. Paint your growth curve a little bit again, however you think about it. Is it, over a 3-year average growth rate recently, or however you think about it?
We are growing at approximately 1,000 students per district. Now, this year, if you compare our numbers today to this time last year, we have increased approximately 850. So I'm thinking by the end of the year, because believe it or not, we will have approximately 50 students enroll between now and the end of the year. We'll probably end up with 900 additional this year.
What is your student population size?
17,541.
Okay, I'll run the percentage later. And that's been sort of, that's pretty typical for the
past decade.
And it looks like it'll be that way for another couple of years anyway.
Well, I think it will slow down, and when I say slow down, many people take that as you're actually not growing. It may slow down to about 700, but I continue to remind people it stops when it hits zero. So we will continue to grow into the future.
Okay, that's helpful. Other questions? If not, we thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very
today.
much.